Hey, it's Drybear. We finally have a full patch notes for 10.0.5 coming to the game next week, and some of the features are making it in, some are getting a little delayed, but since I've covered most of the individual patches on the PTR so far, we're not going to go line by line, but we're going to give an overall final notes for the upcoming patch so we know what makes it in, including the balance changes, and that way we're all on the same page. As always, if you have any questions or comments for me, you'll find me live every day on twitch.tv/Drybear. Come by and say hi. And boom, here we go. Dragonflight 10.0.5 content update notes. Now, again, I have covered most of this in different videos in the past, specifically most of the balance changes. There are some new ones in here that we're going to want to talk about. And there's quite a lot of changes here that you're just going to want to absorb and let it be part of your awareness as you go into 10.0.5. There's some pretty substantial talent reworks, tree reworks, new abilities, new things coming to classes, and hopefully some positive effects on the classes that are suffering the most right now in PvE specifically, and a little bit in PvP as well. But obviously it does seem that like PvE raid specifically is the main focus of the content balance changes in this. So let's jump into it. Let's start with the first item, which is the trading post. I think it is important to highlight here that the trading post has been delayed. So they've mentioned on the first line here, a new feature is making its way into World of Warcraft on February 1st. So 10.0.5 overall content and balance changes are coming in January 24th, which is next Tuesday. This feature, the trading post, is coming in on February 1st. So you'll have to wait for that one. This one is, to give a quick recap of this, without going too much in detail, this is essentially a monthly benefit for being active in World of Warcraft. It is a rotating window shop that will have transmogs, mounts, pets, all sorts of goodies in it. And you'll need to earn these coins, this special currency, to get the items in it. There's two main ways that you get these coins. The first is you get 500 tender. The trader's tender is the currency. You get it every time when you first log in, you can collect it from the chest at the trading post in either Orgrimmar or Stormwind, and you just get the 500 tender, and then you can log out if you want. You have it. Then there is a battle pass system, a battle pass-like system with quests and things that you can complete in the traveler's log. You do those activities, you can get a 500 additional trader's tender, and then you can use that currency to go to the shop and buy it. You can see in the image here, they do have the celestial steeds. There are mounts, there's store mounts. They've even given, they've suggested, though we haven't confirmed, that there are some limited edition items that never came back after they were offered or sold or acquired that may show up in the trading post. There's a couple that I've really, like, I missed out on the Heroes of the Storm Firecat mount, on the Cataclysm Deathwing mount. So there's some things that I really would like to get that I didn't get a chance to get when they were live. So I hope that those things kind of make their way into the trading post. There's also potentially some transmogs that are gone that will not make it, that might make it back in there. We'll see. The next item is the Storm's Fury event. This is, you can think of this as the Primal Storms plus. It is a new event. It takes place in the Primalist future, which is in Thaldraszus. You go up to the into the bottom right of Thaldraszus, and you'll go into the portal to the Primalist future. And this is like a little mini event. It will drop the Primal Storms currency, which is going to be the Elemental Overflow and the Storm Sigils. So you'll be able to go in there and get that. You can do both. I'm sure they'll both take place at the same time. They haven't mentioned that it won't. This one will take place every 5 hours, and it'll rotate, I think, on a 10-hour cooldown. So 5 hours up, 5 hours down, but those numbers tend to change a lot. So, you know, we'll see if those stick the way they do. They also are offering 385 rings, which you'll get this currency, Essence of the Storm. There'll be a vendor nearby that you can exchange for 385 rings, trinket, and neck. And I think this is mostly because you can get 385 of every other slot, aside from rings, trinket, and neck are the only ones you can't get from the Primalist Storms, and you can upgrade those eventually to 385. And then with this, you can get the replacements, the items you can't get, which is rings, trinket, and neck. So you're able to get those. Hopefully the trinkets are really good. And either way, you'll still be able to get a new mount, a pet, and then that upgrade there. So it's basically Primal Storms plus. Pretty cool there. They fixed an issue with Archivist Codex, yada, yada, yada. Okay, on to balance. Balance changes are pretty big here. So we're going to take this class by class and go through some of the major changes here. There are a lot of line items, and they are things that I've covered extensively before. So if you're looking for the original video for that, I'll put it down in the description if you want to follow along. But let's go through the general idea and focus for each of these classes and how they're being changed. Starting with Druid. So Druid actually is getting some major talent tree reworks. A lot of it is in the class tree, the left-hand side tree of the class. And the reason for this is Druid has one of the worst class trees right now. And the reason I say that is because you basically don't have a lot of points to play with. You can't get to the talents that you want, and some of the talents are just not great. It also forced you to talent into Swipe, which for Feral and for Guardian you needed, so it just got kind of weird. So they're reworking that, and they're reconnecting a lot of the talents and moving things around so that hopefully it gets available for use. We'll see how it actually plays out. I haven't done a lot of theory crafting on the talent tree yet, but I'm hoping that it allows, for example, Resto Druid to be able to get an interrupt, because they have it there, they just can't get to it without losing out on a ton of really great talents. Okay, so Swipe is going to be available for the Druid by default. They're nerfing the damage of it, and then they're making that the talent that used to give you Swipe, it now just makes Swipe and Brutal Slash do more damage. So it's essentially the same thing. It's just if you don't want to get those talents, because if you're in the spec that needs it and you need Swipe, then you're forced to get it and you have to lose out on those talent opportunities. Now it is a swap, and it's a choice, which makes it better. Feral Druids now get Rip instead of Thrash, and they can talent into Thrash, obviously. They now have a new talent, Forest Walk. Casting Regrowth gives you movement speed, pretty cool. They have Gale Winds, increases Typhoon's radius by 20% and range by 5 yards. And there's another option to reduce the cooldown of Typhoon by 5 seconds. This is great because Typhoon was kind of out of the way if you weren't balanced. Even then, like, there's just some weird choices on how to get it, but having Typhoon where it is, and then also having options to scale Typhoon or make it better is pretty cool. Killer Instinct changed to 2 points instead of 1. It grants up to 6% physical damage and armor. Nurturing Instinct is now 2 points as well. Same thing for magic damage and healing. And then in the top left of the tree, they made some more connections. That means that you can skip talents if you wanted. It's not like as this single on rails choice where you have to get all these things you don't want. Like for example, for the example I gave earlier for Resto Druid, they would have to spend like 4 or 5 points just to get their interrupt because they have to go through a talent track they don't normally need, and it costs 4 or 5 points to get there. So Rake and Rip are connected. Maim and Tireless Pursuit are connected. Skull Bash, the interrupt, is connected to Primal Fury and Matted Fur, which takes it further down, which means that if you commit to getting the interrupt, you can then keep going down the tree instead of having to back up and go back down another tree. So it just makes it better. Verdant Heart and Iron Fur are connected now. Wild Growth is moved up, and Remove Curse is moved to the side. This means that you can get Wild Growth a little bit easier on the off specs. Improved Regeneration moved up the tree, so it's easier to get to. You don't have to force yourself down those points. And then Sunfire moved up, and Star Surge moved to the side. There were a ton of builds for Druid. They were getting Star Surge just because they wanted either Typhoon or range, casting range, but then they just never used it. They were never in caster form or Moonkin form, so they never got to use Star Surge. They just got it because the tree was quite inefficient. Balanced Druid, the tree has been redesigned. They've moved some things around. Lunar Eclipse no longer increases the critical strike chance of Starfire. Lunar Eclipse now increases the damage Starfire deals to nearby enemies by 50%. Astral Communion, in addition to its active effect, also passively increases your maximum astral power by 20, which is nice. Umbral Intensity now further increases the damage Starfire deals to nearby enemies by 10-20%. Not huge, but it's helpful, and it helps with some cleave fights. New talent, Cosmic Rapidity. Your Moonfire, Sunfire, and Stellarfire deal damage 13-25% faster, and Circle of Life and Death has been removed. So this is essentially Circle of Life and Death. It makes your dots go faster. It just includes more, which is kind of cool. And it's a little bit more focused too. So I actually haven't looked at the math yet on how, if this is an improvement or not. I think it's a net improvement. I don't think it's all that major, but I could be wrong. Feral, Circle of Life and Death, damage time compression reduced to 20%, was 25%. Taste for Blood changed to a single point node that increases ferocious bite damage by 5% per bleed. It was a 2 point, makes the tree a little bit easier. Sudden ambush changed to a single point node. Same thing there. It grants 6% chance per combo point spent to cause your next shred or rake to deal damage as though you were stealth. Taking the need to put these points out here. You'll see a theme here. They're just making the tree a little bit more. You have more options to choose. It's not so straightforward and chosen for you. Tear Open Wounds is nerfed. It goes to, or it's buffed. It now deals 70% rip damage. It consumes up from 60%, so a little bit more likely to get chosen. Rampant Ferocity damage increased by 10%. It used to do 25%. Now it's 35% more. Dreadful Bleeding is down from 20% to 15%, partly because you're going to get more from Tear Open Wounds. Relentless Predator reduces the energy cost of Ferocious Bite by 40% instead of 20%. Rip and Terror damage increased to 15% of rip, so up 3%. Lunar Inspiration damage increased by 25%. Tear Open Wounds is now directly below Primal Wrath on row 3 at the top of the tree with a connector to Pouncing Strikes, so you can actually connect that over. Survival Instincts moved to row 5. Infective Wounds removed to row 5. That way you get more choices from where they were before. Lunar Inspiration moved below and to the left of Sudden Ambush. Berserk moved to row 6, Mona Clary moved to row 7, and then Berserk Heart of a Lion and Berserk Frenzy moved within row 7, and they made the connections based on these changes here a little bit cleaner. Position of Wild Slashes and Brute Strikes swapped in their choice node. This is meaningless. It's still the same thing. The Guardian Druid. Guardian Tree has been redesigned. Ursine Adept is now learned at level 10. Okay. Innervate this makes this baseline. Innervate can now be cast in bear form. This is huge. If you picked up Innervate in bear form, you can't transfer out when you're playing bear. You would just die. So being able to cast this means you can now pick it up and use it like a true druid. Thorns of Iron, which is a new talent. When you cast Iron Fur, you also deal physical damage equal to 30% of your armor, split among enemies within 12 yards. This is a cool choice. I'm actually excited about testing this out. Mainly because, especially if you do like a full incarnation berserk build and you're spamming Iron Fur over and over and over, it means you can cleave damage and you don't have to be. Basically, it makes that window a little more interesting, so you can do offense and defense simultaneously, which is kind of a weird thing that Guardian Druids have to decide on right now. Raise is a new talent. Strike with the Might of Ursoc, dealing physical damage to all enemies in front of you. Deals reduced damage beyond 5 targets. Moonless Knight, another new talent. When you cast a single target ability on an enemy afflicted by Moonfire, you cause them to burn for an additional 10% arcane damage. This is crazy because Guardian Druids already do a ton of arcane damage, so this is going to give them a nice damage boost, assuming they can pick it up. Lunar Beam summons a beam of lunar light at your location, dealing arcane damage and healing you over 8.5 seconds. Pathing Restructured. This one should be interesting. I actually didn't test it on the PTR to see if it's at your feet or not. This could be cool. It could be kind of smooge. We'll just have to see how that goes. Front of the pack moved to row 3. Flashing Claws switch position with Reinvigoration. Earth Warden, Tooth and Claw, Reinforced Fur, and after the Wildfire, Guardian of Maloon now have connections into the final gate section. This is great because this row is super saturated for Guardian. It's hard to choose between these because they're all so good. And there's just tons of builds where you pick different ones, but sometimes your hand would be forced because you'd have to take a path down to the bottom of the tree. So having these new connections here helps a lot. Pulverize, Blood Frenzy, and Twin Moonfire have found slightly different homes, cleaning up the tree a little bit more. Vicious Cycle, Fury of Nature, and Scintillating Moonlight have changed icons, added a tracker buff for after the wildfire to indicate remaining rage expenditure until a proc occurs. Now we can do weak auras. Woo! I mean, you kind of can do them already, but this makes it a lot easier to track and display. So now we can know when the next after the wildfire is going to proc, so that when you're saving it for a big AoE, when your group gets hit, you can save it. So you have like 5 rage left. Boom, you can pop after the wildfire, help your healers out. It's great for M+. It's good for a lot of fights in Vault. So we like that. Restoration Druid. This used to be bigger. I'm not sure what they decided with this one. A lot of the benefit that they'll get is coming from the class tree, but there's some other benefits here as well. New talent, Forest Flow. They're trying to make Nourish more viable. Nourish extends the duration of your life bloom, rejuvenation, regrowth, and wild growth effects on the target by 4 seconds. So there could be mastery-ish kind of build where you stack up a whole bunch of hots. Maybe this is super good in PvP. Maybe this is super good in M+. I'm not sure, but we'll just see where the testing goes once it's out and available. Wild Synthesis, new talent. Regrowth decreases the cast time of your next Nourish by 25% and causes it to receive an additional 33% bonus from Mastery. Harmony stacks up to 3 times. So again, you can regrowth, Nourish, and then extend all the durations. This can be very PvP focused, and it makes Nourish a little bit more of an option because right now it isn't really taken outside of very specific situations. Forest Flow, Wild Synthesis, Choice Node connection added below Nourish, and the tooltip has been updated as well. Preservation Evoker, easily the best healer in the game right now as of week 6 of PvE. Insanely strong, just, yeah, they're just so good. But there's some changes here that may impact how that functions. And again, I haven't gone on the PTR. I've been busy grinding live, so I haven't been testing this on PTR. I'm not sure how this will affect their throughput, but there are some interesting changes in here. Redesigned delivery method for Temporal's Anomaly Absorb Shields. Basically what they're doing with these next few for Temporal Anomaly, TA, is they're trying to make it so it's less abusable. So it's gonna, right. Absorb Shields are now applied to all allies it passes through instead of just a limited number. So it's just, it hits everyone with Absorb Effectiveness reduced beyond 5. So rather than having to slow it down so you can pulse and get more targets, it's consistent speed. The orb will no longer slow down when it detects ally in its radius. It goes pretty fast on its own and then slows down. Now it's more about you standing in the right position, throwing it out and hitting someone with it. And it'll hit everyone in the area. And if there's more than 5 targets, it'll be reduced. So you get, it's a lot more consistent, and it won't just be able to sit there and pulse, which especially in raid scenarios, provokers were using to get insane throughput. TA has also been super nerfed in cooldown. It was a 6-second cooldown. Now it's 15 seconds. It felt weird that it was 6 seconds because it was so strong and because it costed so much mana. You were basically stacking up like 2 to 3 of them for stasis or using big pieces for cooldown, and then you would kind of chill on it to let your mana regenerate because it costs a lot. This one is now going to be a much longer cooldown, and then it changes how you deal with the talents. Now, Dormu's Teachings has been redesigned. It now reduces the cooldown of Empower spells by 5 seconds after you cast Temporal Anomaly, and this should work with Stasis as well. Resonating Sphere now applies Echo to the first 6 allies it passes through, rather than everyone. This is how Provokers would get crazy raid healing, is they'd get everyone stacked up, throw out a TA, and then they get Echo on everyone, and they do a Dream Breath or, something, and it would just blow up and heal everybody. Time of Need cooldown reduced to 60 seconds from 90 seconds. This is the talent that spawns an image of you that heals people. It's actually insanely good, but it can be a little RNG when it spawns and who it targets. So it's just getting that cooldown reduced, which means that if you get a bad proc where it targets the wrong person or it's at the wrong time since you can't control it, it'll come back sooner, which I think is a good change. Casting Echo directly after Living Flame or Spirit Bloom will no longer consume the Echo. This is, I love it and I hate it. I think there's definitely some really cool value from where you could Echo as the Living Flame or the Spirit Bloom was charging or traveling, and you can get these crazy double procs. You could actually double heal people. You could get the 4 stacks split on your Living Flame, throw out the, someone just followed. Throw out the Living Flame, and then you could double tap instantly with the Echo after. It's kind of like with Paladins where you can Beacon of Virtue with a flash as it ends and you get an extra proc. That's no longer possible. The Echo will not be consumed if you cast it. If you cast Echo directly after, it won't be consumed until you cast again. The pros and cons there. I'll have to play with it for a while and see how I like it. Emerald Communion will no longer cancel if the Evoker is disoriented or feared during the channel. That's kind of insane and probably partially PvP-ish. There isn't really too many of these that it matters that much in PvE, but in PvP it certainly does. Emerald Communion will now properly calculate its overhealing value. In addition, its healing to allies can no longer critically heal. That's kind of a big one. Emerald Communion now always prioritizes players over pets. Yay, big one. Hunter Marksmanship, some big things here. There's the biggest one is right here. Double tap has been removed. So they are going forward with this. Double tap is gone. I think they just feel like they can't balance it in PvP. That's my best bet, is that they feel like that no matter what, they can't balance it in PvP, and they're trying to find a way to replace it in PvE. But if you're a marksmanship hunter, let me know how you feel about this. Double tap as of Tuesday, gone. Steady focus has swapped to its position in the talent tree. You now get tactical reload, aimed shot, and rapid fire cooldown reduced by 10%. This is a passive. Salvo has been redesigned. Your next multi-shot or volley now also applies explosive shot to up to 2 targets. This one should be super fun. It's kind of like a Seed of Corruption. You can shoot out a bunch of explosive shots, explode. I think this is probably going to be more fun than Salvo. Calling the shots now reduces the cooldown of True Shot by 2.5 seconds per 50 focus. Cool. Talent got a little bit better. Monk. Some big changes here as well for Monk. Some cool stuff overall, I think. They fixed some issues with the Fey line. It had a lot of issues. They didn't get all of them, but these two are some pretty big ones. Then Phalanx Stomp now always spawns with a minimum of 1 branch. This is nice because sometimes if it clipped a wall, you just get a little baby Phalanx Stomp. It'll now at least always have 1 direction, which gives you more area to play with. And it has a 100% increased chance to spawn circles within its arc, which means that you get more of that area inside the tree when it does branch out, and it always branches out at least once. This gets rid of the situation where Phalanx Stomp would just proc really weird and give you some really small, confined areas to deal with. Brewmaster, new ability, Spirit of the Ox. Your Rising Sun Kick and Blackout Kick have a chance to summon a healing sphere. Nice. This gives a lot more self-healing. We'll probably end up picking this up, but we'll see. Stagger's now a baseline ability. You picked it up anyway, regardless, because you can't not have it. But this probably takes the spot of it here. Resonating Fist damage reduced by 45%. So these changes, what they're doing with this, Resonant Fists, especially on big pulls, is like your highest damage output. It's insane. So what they're doing is they're taking that passive effect and reducing the effectiveness of it, and then taking your active abilities like Keg Smash, Tiger Palm, Blackout Kick, Spinning Crane Kick, Breath of Fire, the things you press a button for. They're raising those damages up and then lowering the damage of Resonant Fists. Again, I haven't seen parses yet on where this sits overall, but it's probably going to feel better because then your abilities will hit harder, and it will surely help you get on-demand threat, especially on pull, where you wouldn't be relying on Resonant Fists to proc as much as well. Quick Sip now purifies 5% of damage delayed by Stagger instead of 2%. Nice. Gift the Ox is now a 1-rank talent instead of 2. Graceful Exit, 1 and 2. Quick Sip, 1 instead of 2. Staggering Strikes, 1 instead of 2, which gives you more options to distribute those points amongst the tree, which should be pretty cool. Mistweaver. Some super fun things here. I'm very excited to test these out. I haven't been theory crafting on the Mistweaver changes too much because I just wanted them to go live. I want to try them in live. I didn't want to mess around on the PTR. But this could create a caster Mistweaver playstyle as a viable option. We're getting some cool stuff. Keep in mind, if you're fist weaving, you still get the Phalanx Stomp buffs. It means it's going to be a lot easier to deal with Phalanx Stomp. Remember, the longer you're on Phalanx Stomp, the more you can reset it, and you can always have it up. This prevents some really weird procs, especially in M+ for Mistweaver, where they can't get it. But if you want to cast, there's other options here as well. Revival, healing now doubled while not in raid. It should have happened already. It's going to be so much better. It's nice that this isn't just really a cleanse and a minor heal. Vivify now costs 3.4% of base mana instead of 3.8%. Mistweavers always have been the mana burners, so it's going to be tough for them to, especially if they go back to casting, to keep up. So when they Vivify, it's going to cost less mana, which is nice. Awakened Phaline and Ancient Concordance now linger for 8 seconds after leaving Phaline Stomp, which means that you can tap Phaline Stomp, and then you can use the Awakened Phaline to be able to heal and do things and all that without having to stand on it. And it's like the worst feeling in the world when you put it down and then the tank pulls the mobs away or something spawns in a raid and you have to move away and you leave your Phaline behind and you haven't reset it yet and you have to walk away from it. Rising Mist now extends Renewing Mist applied by Rapid Diffusion. That's a nice benefit. Jade Serpent now reduces the cost of Enveloping Mist by 50% instead of 33%, which means you should be able to get a free Enveloping Mist on 2 stacks, whereas with Chi-Ji, it needs to be 3 for it to be free. Echoing Reverberation now only requires Enveloping Mist to trigger an additional Zen Pulse. Zen Pulse damage and healing increased by 25%, and it triggers your mastery. Zen Pulse started out the expansion being really cool, and then ended up being, so far has just been kind of meh. Not really reliable, a lot of requirements, and the output's not great. This should help a lot, and it triggers your mastery, which should be super cool for this caster build. Now, we're getting Shadowlands Gift back from Legion. This one is you spawn clouds everywhere, little puffers. It's almost like the insect glaive from Monster Hunter Rise. You get all these clouds everywhere, and then you can suck in all the clouds at once, all the ones you have deployed, and you'll heal 3 nearby allies per cloud absorbed. A cloud of mist is generated every 8 seconds while in combat. So the clouds are just appearing, and then you can use it. It was casted in Legion. I haven't confirmed if it's still going to be casted. It probably will be. Like 1 to 2 second cast time, and then you'll have that. Veil of Pride, new talent, increases Shadowlands Gift Cloud of Mist generation to every 4 seconds instead of every 8, so you can talent into it. By the way, this is going to be in the bottom right of the tree. It's replacing the Maldraxxus ability that we had before, the Bone Dust. That's going away from Mistweaver. It's being replaced by Shadowlands Gift. You can see that here. So Bone Dust Brew, Attenuation, and Bountiful Brew, which is the modifiers for it, are gone, and it's getting replaced with Shadowlands Gift. The third one's super cool. Xiaohao's Lessons. Each time you cast Shadowlands Gift, you learn one of the lessons for up to 30 seconds based on how many clouds of mist are consumed. So kind of moving in that Mistweaver style with Thunder Focus Tea, you can do Doubt, Despair, Fear, or Anger. Either increasing your spell and healing, your spells and abilities, the healing and damage by 35% for 30 seconds. Critical strike chance by 30%, well above 80% health. Increases your damage taken by 15% and increasing your haste by 25%. Super nice for fist weaving, by the way. 25% of the damage or healing you deal is duplicated every 4 seconds. Hopefully there's some good usage for all these, but I'm gonna let it kind of go live and see how it plays. Burst of Life, this one's cool. Life Cocoon's cooldown is reduced by 20 seconds when you get it, and the absorbed amount is reduced by 40%. When Life Cocoon expires, it releases a burst of mist that restored health to 3 nearby allies. It's a choice node with Calming Coalescence. Remember, you can apply HOTS with Life Cocoon. It's a shorter cooldown, and it can explode to give more AoE. This is going to be super cool in Mythic Plus. You'll use Life Cocoon more often. You get some AoE healing from it. You can even use it just to apply HOTS, that sort of thing. So that's pretty cool. Added connection from Veiled Pride, Xiao's Lesson, choice node, to Rising Mist, Tier of Morning, choice node. So if you are going casting, you can go down into Rising Mist and connect it over, which is pretty cool. Bone Dust Brew gone, all that stuff gone. Windwalker, Feline Stomp now correctly counts for mastery combo strikes, which it didn't before. It was harder to keep it up. Nice little benefit. Last Emperor's capacitor stacks are correctly removed on talent removal. Glory of the Dawn is now correctly reduced by Storm, Earth, and Fire. Yada yada. Paladin class added a tracker buff for after image to indicate remaining holy power expenditure until a proc occurs. Pretty cool. Same thing as the After the Wildfire for Druid. Holy Paladin, Blessing of Winter, which you put it on someone and when they attack, they do a stacking slow plus frost damage. That is now being reworked to restore 1% mana per 2 seconds. This lasts 30 seconds, and it's only castable on friendly healers. So it's a nice, most healers have a way, either, like Source or Innervate or, whatever it is, that it's another option for Paladins to bring some mana regen for another healer, which is cool. Avenging Crusader now costs 5 holy power instead of a bunch of mana. Reduced cooldown to 45 seconds from 2 minutes, and reduced duration to 12 seconds. So this is kind of like your Chi-G version of holy. We've had this in most expansions. Super fun. It just hasn't been super viable. Curious if the mana cost removal and the cooldown reduction makes this a lot more viable, especially in Mythic Plus. A 45-second cooldown is going to be pretty cool. Tower of Radiance now causes Holy Light and Flashlight to additionally have a chance to grant a holy power based on your target's current health when cast on targets without Beacon of Light. This is nice because previously you would have to either have Beacon of Virtue up, or you would need to target your Beacon of Light target in order to get value out of this. Now you don't have to. So it's a chance to grant a holy power based on your target's current health when cast on targets without your beacon on them, and increases to 100% of targets below 50% health. So if you use Tower of Radiance proc to Holy Light or Flash of Light, even if it's not on a target that has beacon, if they're low HP, you can still get that extra holy power, which makes it a lot more viable. There are situations where the tank that has Beacon of Light on it is at 100% HP and someone's dying and you have Tower of Radiance and you don't get the Holy Power because you're not going to heal the tank who's full HP when someone's dying. Tears Deliverance healing increased by 25%. Again, another Legion ability. Super fun, not picked at all, pretty weak and random, but a 25% increase should help it be a little bit more viable. After image no longer triggers Awakening or Divine Purpose. Avenging Crusader can now trigger and consume Divine Purpose. Ooh, that's cool. Empyrean Legacy and Avenging Crusader now display on the personal resource bar. Neato Burrito! On to Priest! I lost my image. There we go. Priest class Surge of Light now properly triggers from all healing spells. Empiric Embrace is no longer on the global cooldown. This is a nice one for Priest. They can now heal with this without waiting for a cooldown to do it, or waiting for the GCD to roll back to do it. Sun Lane now causes Sanguine Teachings to grant an additional 2% leech. Manipulation can now be triggered by disciplines Power Word Solace and Mind Blast, and Shadow's Mind Flay and Mind Flight Insanity. So now you can trigger manipulation a lot more easy. Powered Solace got super buffed recently, just wasn't really being picked up a lot. And then Mind Blast not triggering it was kind of annoying. New talent, Petrifying Scream. This is the one that makes so they don't move when you Psychic Scream. Super useful on like Dathia when you need to keep the ads in one place, and then can be useful in varying other situations as well. This is the class tree. Sanguine Teachings increases leech by 3% on top of an additional 2% with Senlin. On a choice node with Vampiric Embrace, and the root effect of Void Tendrils is now displayed on enemy nameplates. Not a huge deal. You kind of knew they were rooted, but at least now you can see it. Discipline. I don't believe, and you'll see some Power Word Solace stuff in here, I don't believe this saves Discipline, but it's going to be a lot better. So we'll see. Hopefully this makes a very meaningful change, but there is some cool stuff in this. So if you're playing Discipline, you're hoping for good news, here you go, here you go. Pain Transformation now causes Pain Suppression to heal your target for 25% of maximum health instead of 12. 12 for your Pain Suppression cooldown was just so minuscule. 25% even doesn't feel like a crazy amount for how long it is, but keep in mind that we're also getting 2 charges of Pain Suppression. So you can get Pain Transformation, and then you can get Protector of the Frail, which gives a second charge of Pain Sup. So you get 2 Pain Sups, and you can heal people with Pain Sup. Kind of interesting. Should be fun. Light's Wrath now costs 2% of base mana. Not a big deal. You didn't cast it. It's all on a long cooldown anyway. Powered Solace damage reduced by 15%. Mind Blast now costs 1.6% of base mana instead of 2.5%. Painful Punishment now increases the duration of Shadow Word Pain, or Purge the Wicked by 1.5 seconds, up from 0.7, so that got doubled. Embrace Shadow now increases the duration of Shadow Covenant by 8 seconds instead of 4 seconds. Thank God. This one plus, there's one more right here. Shadow Covenant now converts Penance to a Shadow spell. This is big, because when you were doing the Shadow Covenant playstyle for Disc, Color Corruption removed, Shadow Covenant increases the damage and healing of Shadow spells by an additional 10%. The Shadow Covenant build is stronger by 10%. Embrace Shadow now increases the duration of Shadow Covenant by 8%. And then, finally, this is the change I was hoping for. Shadow Covenant now converts Penance to a Shadow spell while it's active. You had to wait for Dark Side. It's the talent in the top right of the tree where if you farm the proc with smites, you can turn your penance into a shadow spell. You would basically wait for that proc, then Shadow Covenant, then use the penance. But now you don't have to wait for the proc anymore. You can just Shadow Covenant, penance becomes shadow. You get the shadow conversion from the shadow build. Dark Reprimand can now be cast on allies. Sweet. Stolen Psyche has been redesigned and renamed to Abyssal Reverie. Atonement heals for 10%, 20% more when activated by Shadow spells. So this just amps up the Shadow playstyle. I enjoy the Shadow playstyle. I'm happy to see it getting some nice buffs here. Train of Thought causes Power Word Solace to trigger a cooldown reduction for Penance in addition to Smite. Huge. So that makes Power Word Solace more viable because then you can keep the cooldown on Penance coming down. Blaze of Light increases the damage of Power Word Solace in addition to Smite and Penance. Cool. Wheel and Woe increases the damage of Power Word Solace in addition to Smite. Nice. Wheel and Woe is a good talent. Sometimes hard to pick up. It's at the very bottom, but it is good. And I'm glad to see Power Word Solace being added to it. Wrath Unleashed increases the damage of Power Word Solace in addition to Smite. Harsh Discipline can now trigger from Power Word Solace. And Mind Blast in addition to Smite. This talent is no longer tracked through Smite and instead appears on the personal resource display. Void Summer now triggers Power Word Solace. Added a few connections in row 6 and row 8. And fixed an issue with Dark Reprimand. Cool. Holy Burning Vehemence is now a 2-point talent and has been redesigned. Increase the damage of Holy Fire by 15%, 30%. Holy Fire deals 15%, 30% of its additional or initial damage to all nearby enemies within 12 yards of your target. This gives you AoE option when you're running the AoE trigger where you can get 3 extra Holy Fires. You can now get AoE from that, which makes your AoE rotation a lot simpler. For Holy, you had to kind of stack a bunch of them together on pull, especially in M+, which got kind of annoying. Prayers of the Virtuous now increases the maximum stat count of prayer mending by 2 per point. Burning Vehemence and Searing Light have swapped positions, and Searing Light is now a 1-point talent instead of 2. Shadow, Divine Star, Halo, Mind Games all generate Insanity. Super cool. Mind Games didn't before. Divine Star and Halo are your extra cooldowns. This just gives you even more Insanity generation. I don't think Shadow's in a bad spot, but this is kind of a quality of life. If you're going to cast these spells anyway, it's nice to be able to dump them, put them on cooldown on your opener, and still get Insanity out of it. We like that. Psychic Link now also functions with Mind Games, Void Bolt, and Void Torrent. Resolved an issue with Halo and Divine Star. Rogue. All rogues now learn Feint at level 12. A lot of people weren't picking Feint or weren't using it, so now it's just base kit. Cool. New talent, Unbreakable Stride passive, reduced duration of movement slowing effects by 30%. Sepsis now grants 1 use of a stealth ability immediately, in addition to its previous effects, mostly for subtlety. Elusiveness, Cheat Death, Choice Node has moved up to row 2, taking the position of where Feint used to be, because Feint is now baseline. Fix an issue with Garrow. Cool. Assassination, new talent, Arterial Precision. Shiv strikes 4 additional nearby enemies and increases your bleed damage done to affected targets by 20%. Maybe this, I'm guessing this gets picked every time in M+. Gives Assassination some other AoE options, which is what they struggle with. Changing targets and AoE has always been a problem for Assassination, so maybe this helps. Kingsbane has moved and now shows a location with Dragon Tempered Blades as a choice node. Dashing Scoundrel now costs a maximum of 2 points instead of 3. Outlaw, easily the best, one of the best, if not the best damage spec in the game right now. Killing Spree now reduces damage taken by 65% while active. Fan the Hammer's additional pistol shots now generate 1 fewer combo point. It will reduce some of their crazy combo point spending, but it's not massive. It's not a massive change. Invigorating Shadow Dust for subtlety now reduces effective cooldowns by 1530, up from 1020. Effectiveness reduced by 50% in PvP. Means that picking up Invigorating Shadow Dust is now a little bit more interesting. For Shaman, Mana Spring Shaman, who is in the biggest keybind crisis of any class in the game right now. They have so many buttons, it's nuts. Mana Spring Totem, which is another button, is now no longer a button. It is now a passive. So yay, we can reclaim one of your keybind spots for Shaman. Healing Tide Totem, just like Revive, is getting doubled its healing value while not in raid, which will help Resto Shaman mostly in M+ and in PvP. Warlock, Soul Keeper, which is that ground target AoE, when the Soul Keeper shows up and then just he works, he gets paid by the hour, so he sits there for like 9 years just pulsing AoE damage, which is great in raid where the mobs are going to stay there for a while, but if they move, or in Mythic Plus, if they move or die, the Soul Keeper just takes too long. So it's being redesigned. Summons a Soul Keeper that consumes all tormented souls you've collected, blasting nearby enemies for chaos damage per soul consumed over 8 seconds. So now it's max 8 seconds, and the damage scales with the amount of tormented souls you've collected. Yes, good. I think that's cool. It makes it a little bit more usable and viable. Inquisitor's Gaze is now passive and has been redesigned. Your spells and abilities have a chance to summon the eyeball that deals chaos damage over time. That way you don't have to press it. I think this is cool. It's one less thing to think about, which I think is good. Affliction, new talent, Focus Malignancy. Malefic Rapture deals 15%, 30% increased damage to target suffering from unstable affliction. I think this will get picked, but we'll see. Soul Swap has been redesigned. Copies your damage over time effects from the target, preserving their duration. Your next use of Soul Swap within 10 seconds will exhale a copy of the effects onto a new target. This is something that they had, I believe, in Rift for a lot of the dot classes. It's so nice. So when you know a mob's about to die, you've already dotted it up. You can snapshot those dots and paste them on someone else, which keeps the rhythm going, and you don't have to use a bunch of globals to try and catch up. Hopefully this helps Affliction in general just be better. Soul Tap has been removed. Pandemic Invocation has been moved to row 6 and now is a 1 rank talent, giving you a little bit more freedom to play along with. Demonology, Fellstorm, Guillotine, and Demonic Strength now place one another on cooldown. This is probably mostly just for PvP to limit that small window insano bursto damage. So Fellstorm puts Guillotine and Demonic Strength on cooldown for 5 seconds. Demonic Strength puts Fellstorm and Guillotine on second for 5 seconds. And then Guillotine puts Fellstorm and Demonic Strength on the cooldown for 8 seconds. So it just limits that burst window. In Raid, it probably won't matter that much except for very concentrated AoE pulls. But it will impact your ability to deal crazy burst damage in Mythic Plus, and will limit some of the crazy bursts that Demonology has in PvP, specifically Arena. Destruction. Ashen Remains now causes Chaos Bolt, Incinerate, and Shadow Burn to deal 5-10% increased damage to targets afflicted by Immolate. Eradication now causes Chaos Bolt and Shadow Burn to increase damage you deal to the target by 5-10%, and Burned Ashes now causes Chaos Bolt and Rain of Fire to increase the damage of your next 2 Incinerates by 15-30%, and Shadow Burn to increase the damage of your next Incinerate by 15-30%. Nice. I don't think either of these are crazy. It just kind of makes you a little bit more viable options to choose there. On to Warrior. Arms. Improved Slam is a new talent and makes Slam a little more viable. Has a 10% increased chance. When you have this, Slam has a 10% increased chance to crit and deals 30% increased crit damage. New talent, Spiteful Serenity, Colossus Smash, and of Avatar's durations are doubled, but their damage bonuses are reduced by half. New talent, Strength of Arms, Overpower has a 10% increased critical strike chance, and on enemies below 35% health, and generates 8 rage. Arms is getting better as the season goes on, and hopefully these make their way into new builds. Defensive Stance is now talented by default, so you don't have to choose which one you're going to pick. Sweeping Strikes is now baseline. That's pretty cool. Improved Sweeping Strikes now lasts 6 seconds, up from 5 seconds. Improved Overpower and Battle Lord now increase the damage of Dreadnought. Dreadnought was underutilized, so there's been some changes recently. I haven't actually checked in to see if it's being picked up more. It's possible that it has been, but this change will be nice. Battle Lord's chance to reset the cooldown of Mortal Strike or Cleave increased by 10%. Battle Lord now increases the damage of Overpower by 10% more than before. Skull Splitter now causes Deep Wounds to expire instantly. Tide of Blood now only causes Rend to expire instantly as Deep Wounds is built into Skull Splitter. There you go. Fatal Mark duration increased to 120 seconds, up from 60 seconds. Makes it much nicer, much more convenient. Storm of Swords causes Whirlwind to cost 20 more rage, was 30, so it's a little bit more easy to pick up Storm of Swords and spam Whirlwind. Shuffled the position of some nodes towards the end of the tree and added some new connections to try and aid the creation of more general builds. Valor and Victory now only 1 rank, and now provides 1% versatility and reduces the cooldown of Die by the Sword by 30 seconds. Improved Mortal Strike removed from the tree. Ignore Pain has been added to the Arms tree. So Ignore Pain now as an option if you really want to off-tank. There you go. Fury Onslaught damage increased by 40% and now generates 30 rage. There's some cool things you can do with Onslaught and other ways to proc it, which is cool. But it generates more rage and the damage is increased. So that's going to help a lot. Fury's actually been kind of slipping ever since the start of the season. They started strong and they've just been kind of slipping down pretty hard. Tenderize causes Enrage to last 2 seconds longer, up from 1. Storm of Steel's Ravager damage, reduced by 30%, was 40%, and gains 5 more rage. Frenzied Flurry increases auto attack damage with one-handed weapons by 30%, up from 5%. Unbridled Ferocity causes Onslaught to trigger Recklessness in addition to Rampage. That's super fun. I'm excited to test that out. Storm of Swords, Whirlwind damage increased by 10% more than before. Anger Management now decreases the cooldown of Ravager. Oh, more AoE. Duration of Avatar and Recklessness caused by Berserker's Torment is now doubled, up from 4 seconds to 8 seconds. Those are the balance changes. There's definitely some big holes here. I think there's definitely some changes that probably should be, there's some classes that still need to come up. I think I would love to see more for Fire Mage and Frost Mage. I'd love to see more for Disc Priest. I don't think there's enough here for Disc Priest. The tree changes are super nice for Monk and Druid. That cleans them up a good bit. The Evoker Changes, some of it's for PvP, Some of it is just to prevent some abuse for TA and let other healers heal. Mostly, Hunters kind of got a loss there on marksmanship, in my opinion, but we'll see where it goes. Paladin got some fun changes. We'll see if there's new builds coming out of here. Hopefully, Tyr's Deliverance, Avenging Crusader gets usable. Yeah, and then Priest, Rogue, Warlock, Shaman, Warrior, all good stuff. On to the last part of the patch notes. New rare enemies and NPCs can be found in the area in the elites of Nakud Hold, Imbu, Cobalt Assembly, Tier Hold, and the Primeless Future. Probably new loot pools as well, so that's going to be pretty cool. Some rare enemies that showed up on the zone maps outside the elite areas have had their cadence changed to 1 spawned every 30 minutes instead of 2 every 2 hours. The health reserve has been increased as well, so players have more time to get to them before they're defeated. Thank God. Some of the rares die instantly as soon as they stand up. The new elite area rares and the more scheduled rares have rewards on par with elite rares found in Obsidian Citadel or Brackenhide Hollow. Cool. It means that there's more reason to go into these areas and farm them. The newly trained Draenei, Lightforged Draenei, Tauren, and Heimarn Tauren that now specialize in Rogue and Mage classes are now located in major capital cities. Yay! Holidays. Trial of Style is on. Check it out on the vendors. Lunar New Year is on. It starts with this patch. They delayed it so that they can get the content in and can be earned by honoring elders across the Dragon Isles. Items and rewards. We talked about this already as well in a separate video. But they're changing up group loot a little bit. They fixed an issue where players would get less loot than they should have on certain raid sizes. I swear to God, this happened to me today. I did a 15-man group, and it dropped loot for like an 11-man group, even though there's 15 of us. But they fixed that issue. It is pretty uncommon, but it does happen. Fixed an issue where players can unconditionally roll need on set tokens, even if they already had the item that the set token gives you. Cool. The system will now check if the player owns a token or the set piece itself at equal or greater power. You can't farm secondary stats like avoidance and stuff like that. You can't steal it from someone who actually needs it, so I think that's a win overall for the community. Players can no longer roll need on any profession recipe they have already learned because they would take it and sell it. Players can no longer unconditionally roll need on one-handed weapons if they already had the weapon. The system will now thoroughly identify if you can dual wield based on your loot spec. If you can and you have 2 versions of it, then you won't be able to roll need for it. So if you had 2 copies of it, you could roll need again because the system wasn't checking for it. Now it will. The Revival Catalyst is now available to turn gear earned from Great Vault Mythic Plus, raids, PvP, Tier 2 Epic Storms, Tier 2 War Mode, and World Bosses into the corresponding tier gear for that slot. I think the Catalyst should have come like 3 weeks ago, but we're getting it. So cool. This means that anyone that got super unlucky with set pieces, they'll be able to, convert and get into it. It will be located next to NPC Antuka in Thaldraszus on the northern side of Tierhold. Each week, an account-wide quest will be available, which rewards a charge to the Revival Catalyst. Progress towards this quest will require players to complete relevant raid, M+, PvP, yada yada. Just how you charge the Catalyst. Run a single character or combine across multiple characters on the account. Completion will then award a separate charge for each character on the account, which includes any characters that get created in the future. Yay! The max charges is 6. So that's there. Catalyst is coming. We're excited. I feel like it should have come sooner, but at least we're getting it now with 10.0.5. Common and poor gray items can be transmogged. Enjoy your super basic, slummy whites and grays, you people, you. Enchant Illusion can now be applied to artifact weapons. Super cool. Some of these could not, all of them could not be your Legion artifact weapons. You couldn't actually put illusions on them. So now you can put effects and enchants and stuff like that, which should be pretty cool. New toy, reusable oversized bobber, acquired from catching 100 fish. Former new character starter equipment has returned and can be found at vendors. Mostly just so you can do transmogs if you want to. Pole arms from Shadowlands and Dragonflight have been adjusted to sit lower on the back when sheathed, so they're not shooting up into the ceiling. Fix an issue with lighting, fix an issue, fix an issue. The Mage Tower is coming back. There's already like a limited Guardian Druid Fell Werebear form on time walking weeks, but now it won't have to be time walking weeks. Interested adventurers can go speak to the War Counselor Victoria at Deliverance Point in the Broken Shore in Legion to do the challenges. Defeat the challenges, earn the rewards, and get themed, Legion-themed class-specific armor set appearances, a werebear form, and achievements. And a new mount as well. I don't think they're bringing back everything that was in it, but it is a new, it brings back the Mage Tower, and there's some cool stuff in it. I might do a separate video going over all the new stuff that's in it, and maybe compare it to what it was before, but at least the Mage Tower is there. If you want Werebear form for your Druid, you can still get one of them, and that's pretty cool. PvP War Mode can now be toggled on while in Valdrakken. Woo! No reason for people to go back to Orgrimmar Stormwind. That was just weird and antiquated. I don't know why it existed in the first place. Now you can swap War Mode in Valdrakken. Cool. Solo Shuffle has been reworked quite a lot. They made some changes to this. Several changes have been made to improve how our system handles players who leave matches. Rating will be calculated per round in games with leavers. Matchmaking value for each player in a match will be displayed on the scoreboard. Warning prompt will display the penalties for leaving if a player attempts to leave a match. Players who leave excessively will be subject to account review and suspensions, as abandoning matches repeatedly is a violation of the terms of service. There are a lot of people that just dodged in Solo Shuffle if they didn't like it, and then everyone got screwed. People were deranking because the matches weren't completed, or at the point that they left, they couldn't win the round, and it was like a match point situation. So all of these changes overall are pretty well liked by everyone, by most people in the community, and I think it makes Solo Shuffle a little bit more interesting. Classes, precognition duration increased to 5 from 4. Druid, Feral, Freedom of the Herd PvP talent no longer provides a cooldown reduction to Stampeding Roar. Evoker Preservation, Dream Projection, healing reduced by 35%, and the cooldown has been reduced by 30 seconds. Chrono Loop, another PvP talent, will now display as a large icon on unit frames, and now has a more noticeable effect on the player. It's kind of sneaky, it'll be less sneaky now. Chrysalis now reduces Life Cocoon's cooldown by 30 seconds, down from 45 seconds because they got that talent up above that lowered it by 20 seconds. So if you take Chrysalis and that new talent, it actually is slightly better because you lose 15 seconds off this, but then you gain 20. So it ends up being a little bit more. Paladin Reckoning now highlights judgment when active. Cool. Some cool profession stuff. This is pretty neat. All professions have had the requirements to unlock specializations reduced. We knew this was coming. I didn't know when it was going to come, but 10.0.5 is the answer. Professions with 3 trees have had their final unlock reduced to level 75 from 100. All professions with 4 specialization trees have had their final 2 unlocks reduced to 60 and 75. Portals from Overload Titan Touch nodes should more consistently take you to a new location. Overload Elemental Deposit and Overload Elemental Herb has been redesigned. Overloading cooldown is no longer modified by gathering, mining, or herb nodes. Overload is now taught to all miners and herbalists after collecting their first elemental themed node. Woo! Mastering the Elements unlocked point now restores Overload cooldown reduction functionality. Very good. I think that's kind of cool. And especially later, if you decide you're leveling an alt and you want to do mining or herbalism with whatever else you want, it makes it a little, these changes all across just make it so it's less annoying and grindy to do it, and makes Overload a little less about luck and speed than it is just about grinding. Profession requirements for many transmog eligible pieces have been adjusted or removed entirely. Most items that previously required a profession other than engineering no longer have a requirement for transmog stuff. Engineering items have had their skill requirement reduced to 1. No mission goblin engineering are no longer required to transmog any engineering appearances. Acquisition method for all these items remains unchanged. Warlords of Draenor crafted item appearance have returned. You can purchase recipes for optional reagents for each relevant profession from the vendors in your garrison or in Ashran that cost secrets of tomes, your secret tomes, for whatever profession you have. Legacy weatherworking patterns for heavy scorpion gear that were lost to the Cataclysm can now once again drop from Blackrock Orcs and Burning Steppes. Cool. Pattern Raptor Hide Harness and Pattern Raptor Hide Belt can now both be learned by players of either faction. The Legacy recipe for delicious Goldthorn tea can once again be acquired by Observant Adventures in Razorfen Downs. The UI panel for crafting, multiple charge cooldowns will now list the time of when the next charge will be available. Awesome. You had to click on each one individually and look at it and see how long is left. Now you can just see it a lot easier. Track recipe checkbox is available for recrafting. Cool. Enchanting items now display an enchantment prefix text in the crafted items window. Crafting orders added use highest quality reagent checkbox to the customer. Now they can just say, hey, I want to use the highest quality rage that I have. Crafters could do this, but the customer couldn't. Added option to reject an order by right-clicking on it under Personal Orders tab. Nice. Open all for crafting order. Mail will now auto-delete the mail after receiving the item. Saves you an extra key mouse click. That's nice. Minimap will now show personal crafting order notifications. And there's now confirmation dialog when placing a crafting order for an item the player cannot equip. So it just warns you so you don't accidentally put the order in and spend all that nonsense. UI and accessibility. This is the last section for us. Some cool stuff in here. Experience bars, equipment durability, bags, and the micro button bar can now be adjusted in edit mode. Very cool. These, like if you had your bags thing disappear or you had your experience bars, you would just end up using like bartender or something just because they just weren't there. And the micro button bar is going to be really nice as well. So these just weren't available in edit mode for a reason. Now they are. You can now use arrow keys to fine tune the placement of elements in edit mode like every other editor on the planet. So that's going to be nice. Major faction map icons are slightly reduced in size to improve map visibility. Good. The Dragonflight Great Vault now uses art specific to Dragonflight. It's not the Shadowlands thing anymore. Cool. Dragon Riding World Quests have a new racing icon on the map too. That's nice. Added tools to assist with motion sickness while dragon riding to the accessibilities panel. If you want to go through these, if you get motion sick with dragon riding, there's some options there for you in the accessibility. Added tools to assist with those with sensitivity dragon riding's visual effects, like the rushing wind and things like that. Some people, that makes them sick or it irritates their eyes. So you have more accessibility options on that as well if you're one of those people. Bank bags background color has been adjusted to be different from inventory bags. If you're gonna add on, this doesn't affect you at all, but if you use base, bags, and bank, it looks a little bit different, which is nice, so that when you have a bunch of bags open, it doesn't all look the same. Minimap target icon border will be suppressed while in combat. Thank God. Audio channels and audio cache size options have been moved to the audio menu. The icons for find fish, find minerals, and find herbs have been updated on the minimap filter list. Fix an issue where heal absorb bar did not display. Fix an issue where the flag carrier unit frames did not appear in capture the flag battlegrounds. And the talent window, the reset talents button now lets you reset one tree at a time instead of both of them. That's future technology. Wow. You can now copy someone's build while inspecting them. Also cool. History nodes have a more visually distinct outline. Hidden action bars are now shown when the talent's pane or the spell book is open. The missing from action bar search now specifies talents that are on a hidden or disabled action bar in different stance so that you at least knew that they were somewhere. When UI colorblind mode is enabled under accessibility options, a plus icon appears on all learnable nodes. The loadout / commands, loadout name, loadout index, spec name, spec index are now localized. Fix an issue where talent tooltips were appearing above the PPP, and fix an issue where unlearning talent would clear active searches. The other thing that I would love to have on this, I don't know if anyone else is having this issue. It's driving me absolutely nuts, but I don't want a different set of bars for every talent thing. And I make builds all the time, constantly. So if I don't hit that little check button that says use shared bars, it messes everything up. I really would love to have a global setting that just says always use shared bars. Stop messing with my buttons. I don't care what spec I'm in. I don't care what talent I'm using. I don't care what save I have, what build I have. Always use it. Stop making me click it on every individual build that I make. It's annoying. It's terrible. But that is 10.0.5. I said I wasn't going to do line item, and then I kind of did anyway, huh? So here we are. Let me know what you think about this down below in the comments, how this affects you, what you're excited about, what you're hoping for. And what I'm excited to do the update next week on the best DPS, best tanks, and best heals to see where all these changes land you. Thank you so much for tuning in. As always, if you have any questions or comments for me, you'll find me live every day on twitch.tv/Drybear. Come by and say hi. If you enjoyed yourself today, leave a like down below. You can support me and my work on Patreon and view Patreon exclusive content, link in the description. Thank you so much for tuning in, and I'll see you in the next one.